All right, we're getting into this and talking about what causes narcissism. I've seen some questions and stuff prior, people asking and wanting to know whether or not it comes from the mother, if it comes from the father, and these type of things. And I don't think it's a specific parent that it comes from. We have to understand where how narcissist develops, how narcissism and the trait, the personality disorder, develops amongst professional peers, the psychologists and stuff like that. They will say it's different in some aspects. Where some say it's environmental, some say it's from abuse, from small childhood, from trauma or whatnot. It's a way to deal, a coping mechanism. We have to understand that narcissism is a complex psychological construct that manifests as patterns, right? And these patterns include grandiosity, they need admiration, attention, they lack empathy, they're manipulative, and all of these things, right? And this is what you get information wise, and it's recognized, widely recognized from, a lot of videos, a lot of people that talk about it. But why narcissism at least develops requires a much deeper examination into the basic development of this psychological, this psychological neural type of thing that's going on in their mind, right? So I want to just kind of point some things out, right? And the critical thing that we have to understand is that there's what makes the narcissistic personality disorder what it is primarily rooted in the continuum of these toxic behavior traits. And this is how you differentiate whether somebody is acting in a way where they're narcissistic versus they're a narcissist, right? Because at points, everyone can display narcissistic traits, right? But that doesn't make them a narcissist. So to be a full narcissist, narcissism exists basically on a continuum from healthy confidence to pathological narcissistic personality disorder, right? So with healthy narcissism, which I don't hear a lot of people speak on, it's more of an adaptive trait it contributes to resilience and self-assurance and ambition, right? The thing that if you get down, something says, "No, be down. You're better than that." Show them that you can do better. Show them that you got, and you go out and you perform and act and think in that way, right? It's to lift you up in a way, right? But in contrast, the maladaptive narcissism, which a lot of people don't break down and explain, there is maladaptive narcissism, right? Which involves the fragile self-esteem, the mass inflated part of that person, which makes themselves overly important, and they have dysfunctional interpersonal behaviors, right? That's the maladaptive side of the narcissism trait. So there's two. There's the adaptive, which can be on the healthy side. Then there's the maladaptive, which is where the disorder comes into place, right? And so with that, you're going to have the grandiose, the vulnerable narcissist, right? They're hypersensitive to criticism, insecurities. They're very self-centered because everything is about protecting and making sure they have the best. They can't see outside of them, right? The grandiose narcissists were they're they're the arrogance. This is probably what people refer to as the overt narcissist, the arrogant one, the entitled one, right? They have they lack vulnerability. You're not going to see anything real out of them. This is where the fake character comes in because they can't afford to be real. They're too insecure, right? So when you understand this basis of narcissism, you can start to get into the roots of where it comes from. So it's not simply an inborn trait, but it results primarily in complex interactions between somebody's genetics, early environmental and social experiences, how they were brought up in the household, how that family dynamic was in the household. A lot of these things play a factor, right? Now there has been some attachment theories with the parental dynamics that come out into play with this, and the way a child bonds with their mother, their father, all of the family members in general can shape that self concept and the way that individual gets emotional regulation. So oftentimes narcissism arises in early attachment needs, which are either inconsistently met or inadequately met. This is what we you have to take into consideration how things were growing up that shape the way that person, how their sight, how there's the way that their mindset and everything came into to play, came into form. By 15, your personality's pretty much is gonna be what it is. So some parents was excessively praising and inflating their child's sense of importance when they were coming up, which led to the unrealistic self-perceptions. On the flip side, some parents were more of a cold style way of parenting. The parent was emotionally unavailable or critical of the kids, or they didn't really display feelings, right? So the child kind of grew up with feeling inadequate in ways, and so narcissism early on gets developed as you can say a defense mechanism to counter deep feelings of unworthiness, or to counter disappointment, to counter failure, to counter rejection. All of these things is where narcissism comes into play. This is how they get so good at lying and manipulating and all of this stuff. In most cases, it was rooted it fostered within the childhood setting. They already were narcissists by the time, like I said, before 15. They were already indulging in narcissistic ways, which eventually, because it's a repetitive pattern, they kept using those tactics and being that way till they lost themselves in being that way, and they never developed a set character or personality to operate from or to be in. So they learned from early to adapt to whatever character was going to get accepted or not be rejected. they would interchange those characters, and they never set out to really be themselves from early. They found that using different characters and personalities based off whatever situation was best. So think about that. A person that does that, how can they ever, if they've been doing that since small, we can say from about 7 to 8 years old, tampering with it, and they're experimenting with it at firsthand with amongst their in the family, in the household, then around their peers at school. Then it develops further, and it really gets deep rooted and set in within the junior high years. And this is where the arrested development comes in, where if you dealt with a narcissist, you notice a lot of them seem like they're on a junior high level behavioral wise. Like an unruly junior high school kid. When you really break down how they are and how they act, that's where most of it, the arrested development comes into play around that time. So experiences that they had could have been traumatic, and it doesn't have to be necessarily, it's like somebody could have kept getting rejected or picked on, right, for the way they looked or whatnot. That could be trauma too, right? And especially emotional invalidation, which plays a critical role in the formation of narcissistic traits. We can look at it something like growing up where there's micromanaged love, right? Where a child might have only received love and affection if they were doing what the parent wanted them to do, favors and stuff like that. Or if they were able to meet high expectations that the parent wanted, they would get love and affection and good treatment. If not, they were treated like shit, right? Chronic shame, being, consistently exposed to humiliation or embarrassment, or, there's some parent, they embarrass their kids in public, right? What I'm trying to paint the picture here is all of this stuff that can go on in family dynamics as a child coming up can contribute to narcissistic personality disorder behaviors and ways. The other factors is the genetic and temperament factors, where the interactions with environmental influences, especially with children, which are highly sensitive to, having a difficulty of regulating their emotions. They can be more susceptible to narcissistic traits if they're raised in environments that fail to properly nurture healthy emotional developments. This is why some places, some cultures, where it's seen as weak to show emotion, or it's seen as weak if you want to seek help because you have a hard time coping with stuff, right? These are part of those things that contribute to that. All right. So as they go along, as they they're getting older, the defense mechanisms start to kick in even more, where the narcissist they learn how to develop at least defenses to protect their very fragile sense of self-esteem and self-worth, right? Because these things didn't get properly developed in the first place. They never worked on them, right? As I said before, all they did was find different characters and things that would suit a situation where they wouldn't be rejected. But these were fake. It wasn't them. They didn't know how to be themselves. They felt if they would be themselves, they would be rejected or they wouldn't be accepted. So they learned how to be fake. They learned how to Only live in the moment, at least for the moment of the thrill. They learn how to never really get attached to anything because attachment involves vulnerability at a certain point. And so being vulnerable to them, that they can't have that. That is being vulnerable is a risk. So that goes into being in love. So many narcissists, no, they never was able to love you because love is a vulnerability. Love puts them at risk. Love gets you hurt is how they see it. They don't want to be in love. They don't want deep connection. So the deep connection and stuff that you were feeling was all generated by you because they were only mirroring back to you what you expected to see and wanted. Right? So essentially you're falling in love with yourself. So basically the defense mechanism narcissists use, they fluctuate between viewing others as perfect or worthless. And they do this to avoid the emotional vulnerability again, as I said, of deep connections and relationships. You can't they can't rationalize in between. It's either it's going to be all good or it's not good at all, right? They're going to project a lot, and that's from their insecurities and deep rooted flaws, right? Because the real them, they never even worked on the real them. They don't even really understand how to deal with the real them, the real self that they are. They don't even know how to deal with that person. And this is why whenever you get into, if you notice, you'll never get into a deep conversation about themselves, about with a narcissist. They will not allow it to go there. You know, they lack that ability to really have inward focus because it's driven by the need to protect their self concept. And what that means is their self concept is based on the character that they want people to see and think of them. They have to protect that at all costs. That's why when there's uh, books like that say that's out there, how to not give a fuck and all these, pardon the French, but that's the title of the book, whatnot. And there's books about not caring about, people's opinions and stuff like that. That's important, I think in a lot of ways, because a lot of ways people care too much about the opinions of others, you know, um, as though others are the end all be all, right? And that entails, a lot of stuff where narcissists really go into these other characters because the opinions of others and stuff really affect them more than the average individual. Um, but yeah, there's different things when we get into the part of like culturally, like each culture, it depends on the culture they came up to and into as well, because culture has a significant influence on the prevalence and expression of narcissistic traits. You have the individualism versus the collectivism. You know, um, and narcissists, they're gonna thrive more in the individualistic societies, at least that emphasize personal achievement and self promotion. Excuse me, my voice is kind of messed up, but societies that have a lot of competitiveness, competition, you'll see a lot more narcissists in those type of societies as well. Social media is another thing that we get into that kind of it kind of brought out more of these narcissistic individuals because, again, social media is based on acceptance and validation. Whenever you push someone into that position, you can incite more of those and bring out more of those narcissistic traits where they go from being a shy narcissist to overt right before your eyes. And this is why you see so much of that now in today's society, you know, because social media basically fosters an environment where attention and validation is readily accessible. Just turn your phone on, really, and go jump on a social media app, make some posts or whatnot. Do something that's going to get you attention, and you can have thousands of people, within a matter of minutes, giving the attention and the validation. This is why you see so many narcissists on social media platforms. As long as they have an audience, right? As long as they have someone looking at them, as long as they have someone paying attention to them, they're there. And this is why I say a lot of people on social media are narcissists, right? They're getting the attention. They're getting the validation. They're getting people to look at them. So, yeah, just to conclude, because I'm kind of going on too much in this message, but narcissism it's really not just a simple matter of arrogance or self-obsession. It's deeply ingrained and often a protective adaptation to unmet developmental needs, basically. And so by understanding this, you can get a better grasp of just how and what causes narcissism. This is just a really brief skimming of it, but it gets a lot deeper, but just wanted to shed some light on that. If you felt the video was helpful, please consider to like it and subscribe and share. Till next time, have a good one.